In this video series we're building a stripped back fitting tribute to the Land Rover Defender, and you can follow along every step of the way. Hello, welcome to week one of our build. This is the first episode, the first proper episode. It's been a busy week. We went to Billing at the weekend to help Land Rovers Live with some filming that they had to do. And then we've just been working on the bits and bobs. We've been arranging some processes like shot blasting and stuff we're going to have done to the components we've taken off. But other than that, it's sort of just been stripping down the axles. The axles were not bad internally mechanically, but externally they needed stripping back, which we'll do with a combination of shot blasting and also electrolysis, which I'll show you in a second. Also, all the kind of consumable parts, wheel bearings, things like that, we're just going to swap those as a matter of course, as well as the prop shaft and what have you, to make sure that the vehicle's going to last as long as it can, providing that we maintain it well. I've been looking into options for paint. I ordered some Mordant solution, which is also known as T-Wash, that's the brand name for it. That's a treatment you apply to galvanised metal, and it creates, or it does a metallurgical reaction and allows you to then paint onto the galvanised steel. Otherwise, if you try and paint galvanised, it'll eventually drop off. So I've been looking into that, but I found something called HB vinyl paint. It's been recommended to me by a gate maker that I am friends with, and he says it's fantastic stuff. It goes straight onto galvanised metal, and you can get it in cans as well as aerosol tins. So if you need to do any touching in afterwards, you can do that. The benefit of it is you don't need to apply T-Wash and then an etch primer or a high zinc primer. It's literally just straight onto galv, and it gives you a satin black finish. So I'm going to look into that, maybe order some of that and try some, see what happens. Very exciting news. We have a sponsor for the build, Land Rover Centre Limited. Their website is lrparts.net. They're sponsoring the build, and we will, throughout the series, show you the parts that we're fitting. They're a really cool company. It's a family-owned concern who are growing quite rapidly. They stock parts from Land Rover, so genuine parts, Brit part, as well as all makes / Terra Firma, and also some from places like Oman Emu. So we've got a wide access to parts, which is fantastic. We really appreciate their support. Do check them out. They will be our official sponsor for the build. So the job list for this coming week is to paint the chassis, carry on with the axle strip down. I've done the rear one. I've started working on the front one, which is proving a little bit more difficult, but it's just because it's got more components. We are going to arrange for the shot blasting to be done a week on Monday, the electrolysis that I've mentioned. The workshop needs a good proper tidy out. That's one of the main things. And we'll put some extended videos on, a bit of a different format, so that you can see the jobs we've done in a little bit more detail, and we can talk you through those. This is just sort of a general overview. So we have a new feature, or a new section, mailbox, and it's what's come in the post during the week, so you can keep up to date with the build that way. So these are the parts we've ordered this week. I do want to talk to you about planning for your Land Rover rebuild, because I've done this myself before. You see so many cancelled projects that work themselves onto eBay because people have failed to do a plan. And I've done that myself with a Tomcat build I started on. It didn't really work out for whatever reason, and it was mainly because I hadn't planned. If you fail to plan, then you should plan to fail. So let's talk about the things you need to plan, how you can go about doing it, what you should consider. To physically do your plan, well, I've been using Google Docs, and I do that because it's all online. Like, I've got it literally here. I can have it on my phone, on the tablet, on the computer, so wherever I am I can get to it and I can add and edit my plan. I've also got a whiteboard just over here. On the whiteboard, because it's in the workshop, as we're stripping bits and bobs down, as we're coming up with ideas, in fact I might blow this out because I don't want to spoil it, we can put it on here. So I use a combination of those two and a notebook as well. Obviously use something that suits you, whatever you want. So you need to consider and include budget. That's probably the biggest thing, and time when you come in to do your build. Now, some people choose to do a rolling restoration. whereby the vehicle's never really off the road for more than a weekend or maybe a week. So that allows them to still use the vehicle whilst carrying out the build. It makes it a little bit more complicated, but it can be more cost effective, and it's better for cash flow. So if you get paid weekly or monthly, then you can work around that a little bit better. But we've gone for the slightly more difficult option of a full strip down. It is more expensive because as we're taking components apart and what have you, things break and we realise bits and bobs need replacing. So that is probably the more expensive way to do it. Thinking about time, you need to set aside time to actually do the build and all the restoration work, all the painting, all the cleaning. It's a very laborious job, and so you need actual time to do it and motivation. Plan ahead for, like when you go on a holiday and things like that, and try and be more organised with how you get maybe individual outside helping, like painters, any help that you have, so that your build is not going to get delayed. So think ahead, work out the jobs you have to do, and then plan your budget and time accordingly. Don't forget to budget for things like tools. If you don't have a large selection of tools, there's always going to be something you don't have. Rental for things like steam cleaners, or maybe welder if you don't have one, and things as well like if you have to rent a garage or a unit, the cost of that. And don't forget your time as well. Your time's actually worth something, so you might want to factor that into your build. Plan around how many individuals are going to help you. So in our case, it's just me basically, with a little bit of outside help every so often. So if you can get at least 2 people, that's really going to speed it up. Some of the jobs on the Land Rover are difficult and you need 2 people. Removing the bulkhead, removing the tub, they are kind of bulky stuff that unless you have an engine crane, you probably can't do them yourself. You need to think about the physical space that you're going to do your rebuild. Some people have done a complete Land Rover series or Defender rebuild in the garden, which is fine, and if you're happy doing that, it can work. People have even sprayed or brush rollered the paint for the bodywork outside, so it's doable. But personally, I wanted a bit of space to do this, so I have a workshop. You might be able to do it in a garage. You might have a friend's garage, relatives, or just be able to rent a council garage that can be had quite cheaply. And if you have a dedicated space to the project, it's a little bit easier. Hopefully, nothing from the build will work its way outside, so you shouldn't lose anything permanently. It's also handy if that space has electric and water. If it doesn't, you're going to have to plan to get a generator. Before you strip the vehicle down, have a good look around it and see what condition it's in, because that will have to factor in the amount of work that you're going to be doing. So put that in your plan. Inspect the condition of the mechanical components, the bodywork, decide where you're going to go with the build and to what extent, so that it's written down and you're not going to then be throwing money away or wasting time later on. For example, a vehicle that has been used to launch boats in the sea will be probably quite rusty unless it's been well looked after, as will a vehicle that's been used by a council department for gritting, things like that. So think about the condition of your individual vehicle when you're planning out the build, and as well as having your parts history and the service history, that'll give you an indication of the condition of the vehicle. Don't be scared to get a screwdriver and poke around at the chassis, find weak components, because you need to know so that if the chassis is at a point where it's not repairable, you can order a galvanised chassis, because that takes anywhere between 10 and 12 weeks. That could really slow you down. So you need to know ahead of time for some components that you'll be replacing them. Thinking about how much work you're going to carry out yourself. Are you going to have the bodywork sprayed professionally? Are you going to have the Land Rover rebuilt professionally? Is it just going to be something that you inspect yourself, decide what you want, and then take to a garage? Even so, you should still have a plan if you're going to do that. And that will help, obviously, again, make it a whole lot smoother, and you can then organise the build with, say, a paint, like a date for your spray paint job. So think about that. Make sure you know local suppliers for things like galving, shot blasting. It saves you a lot of time and money if you're not having to transport components and parts miles and miles. So ask around. If you're in a unit with a few others around, you can have a chat with people who have inhabited those units for a while and they know who's good and who isn't round about. And it's really handy then to find out about galvers, powder coaters, shot blasters for any components you want to restore and refinish. Then finally, you want to have a design and a specification list for how you want the finished vehicle to look and upgrades and things you want to make along the way. I have, again, another Google document of all the bits and bobs that I want to buy, all the upgrades I'm going to make. I've also gone and sketched things out. If you can use Photoshop, that's fantastic, because you can take an existing photo of your Defender, of a Defender, and then you can mock it up and design it however you want. And that's going to give you an actual physical image that you can work towards, a bit of a plan for the design and appearance. A lot of people don't really design the Land Rover, and so basically as they go along they just kind of get all these ideas from all over the place and they might forget something. So the way that I've done it is I've created mock-up sketches, which I'll show you now, of some of the components I'm going to build, some of the custom fabrication, the colour, and also body parts we want to add and little design features. And that's going to help kind of make this a little bit more of a concentrated build, so that we know any changes, anything we have to make along the way, will it fit in with the style and the design of the Land Rover that we're intending to build. And as we're making an old school retro stripped back series inspired Land Rover, well then we can work within those parameters. So I hope that's helped a little bit if you are planning a rebuild or restoring the Land Rover. This has been FunRover TV, and this is the first episode of our rebuild. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to support the build, head over to patreon.com/FunRover, where you can donate from as little as $1 per video, and you will receive for $1 stickers, for $15 t-shirts. And the idea is that every video then we start to bring in a little bit of revenue, which we can put straight back into the build. It's going to help us do the build faster, so that'll be really exciting. And we've had quite a few Patreon backers already, or supporters, so that is very much appreciated. Thank you very much. So whilst you check out this electrolysis tank, I'll say goodbye. This is going to hopefully strip a lot of rust and detritus off of our parts. We're testing it out with one of the A-frame arms, and the idea is that using electricity in an electrolyte solution, we can draw the rust and corrosion from one part to the other, and you can actually see it building up on that spring there, which we won't be using, obviously, it's sacrificial. So that should save us quite a lot of time removing paint and rust. Thank you for watching, and remember, where we're going, we don't need roads. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FunRover TV. You can see our last episode here, and also check us out on funrover.com. We are at FunRover on Twitter and Instagram, and we're also on Facebook.